Hi everyone, this is Dr. Victoria Nalule, and in today's discussion we're going to focus on petroleum production in Ghana, specifically the lessons and also the lessons that Ghana can offer to other emerging nations. And also Dr. Ishmael will take us through some of the key things that Ghana should do in order to benefit from its oil and gas resources. But before we start, I'd like Ishmael to briefly introduce himself, tell us more about himself, his career, profession, and experience, and then afterwards, we shall start with the discussion. Ishmael, could you please briefly introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Victoria. I work with the West Africa Energy Program as a regulatory and electricity market expert. Before this, I was a local content coordinator at the Ghana Energy Commission. I've also served as a technical advisor to Ghana's Minister for Planning on energy and petroleum issues. Then I worked with the Africa Center for Energy Policy as a head of policy unit. Apart from this, I also teach, this is my 7th year, I'll be teaching at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, where I teach oil and gas economics. I teach energy markets at GNPC, and also teach part-time at the Institute for Oil and Gas Studies at University of Cape Coast. I've consulted for the African Development Bank, for the United Nations University, and a few other institutions. I hold a PhD in energy economics from the University of Portsmouth, MSc in energy economics from the University of Surrey, Guildford, and I also hold a first degree from the University of Professional Studies, Ghana. So basically, this is a summary about me.
All right, thank you very much for the introduction. And to start off the discussion, could you please give us a brief history about the petroleum production in Ghana? And then afterwards, we can be able to address specific questions.
Okay, so Ghana started looking for petroleum in 1896, so many years ago. Were not so successful until early 90s when we made a discovery at Salt Pond, where in Ghana we call the Central Basin. So we have the Eastern Basin, which is at times called, so we have 4 basins in Ghana: the Voltane Basin, which is onshore, the Eastern Basin, which is at times called the Accra-Keita Basin, the Central Basin, Salt Pond, and the Western Basin. So in the early 90s, early 70s, we made a minor discovery at the Central Basin, started producing a little. The highest we did was about 5,000 barrels a day, at times reaching as low as 500 barrels a day. So we still kept on looking for oil, put in a lot of measures. One of the things we did was to establish a national oil company in the early 80s, the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation. We also drafted and passed the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act around 1984, just to provide that legal and regulatory framework for petroleum exploration and production in Ghana. So we did this, we decided to develop a model petroleum agreement in 2000, 2001. And fortunately for us, and because of a number of reforms, we were able to make a commercial discovery in 2007. So basically, that has been Ghana's journey from where we started in 1896 to 2007 when commercial discovery was made.
All right, so as an economist, an energy economist, I think you are in a better position to take us through the fiscal regime with respect to the petroleum sector in Ghana, because in many countries, like they've had issues with the fiscal regime, where in most cases it's not favorable for the host governments. and it has been a history of learning for different African countries, for different developing countries, on how the countries can benefit in their oil and gas resources. And one way of doing this is through ensuring a competent fiscal regime that is favorable for the citizens. So could you take us through the aspects of the fiscal regime in Ghana? And in your opinion, do you think it's favorable, or there's some key things that need to be amended in order for the citizens to benefit from the resources?
Okay, thank you very much. So in terms of our fiscal regime, I think our framers looked at a number of factors, looking at the government take, looking at investor interest, and again, also looking at the fact that we wanted to use the regime to develop local companies so that time will come when we also have major companies in Ghana. So we can divide this regime into, let's say, three main components. So ours we call it the hybrid system because it takes some portion of the contractual and some portion of the concession. So we have a state participation. So every contract we sign in Ghana, the state participates through the National Oil Company. So when you come in, normally we have what we call a carried interest. So this is more like, let's call it the free interest we give to the state. So let's assume the value of the field is 100. So normally about 10 to 15% is awarded to the state as a carried interest, which we don't really pay almost anything for. But beyond this, the state can negotiate for additional interest. We call this the participating interest. Now, when we take such additional interest, it could be 5%, it could be 20, it could be 30, the state will pay the corresponding costs associated with the percentage we are taking, because we are doing development, we do production and all those things. So if you are taking additional 5%, then if you are more like incurring this amount of cost, you also have to bring in that corresponding amount. So we have the carried interest and the participating interest, which is given to more like GNPC, takes this on behalf of the state. So they manage this on behalf of the state. So that's the first aspect. Now, beyond this, the state also takes corporate income tax, which is about 35% of the net profit, let me call it that way, of the oil companies. We have royalties, which is charged on the gross oil production. So when you look at our model petroleum agreement, the royalty we've classified the royalty into three main types. So we have separate royalty for deep water, separate for shallow, and separate for gas fields. So it provides more like a guide when we are signing such agreement. So the royalty is there. The fiscal regime also requires that we get a Ghanaian firm or a Ghanaian to hold at least 5% equity in the oil field. So one, we have the state, we have maybe foreign companies or majors or other companies. Then a local company that will also hold at least 5% within the project we want to do. This is part of our local content mechanism, something we borrowed from other countries, including Nigeria, to help us build the local companies. So the take is there, the private take is there, the corporate tax is there, the royalty is there. Then we have others like the surface rentals and other payments that may come in. So in summary, I've seen that Professor Wumi is around. Maybe he can touch it when we get there. But in summary, this is the fiscal regime of Ghana.
All right, thank you very much for that. And now on the issue of transparency and accountability, because it has been recognized as the transparency principles have been recognized as some of the principles that are key for countries to benefit from their resources. So what is the situation in Ghana with respect to transparency and accountability?
Okay, so when we discovered oil, we had a number of lessons to learn from. Lessons from us, because we've produced gold for about 100 years before we discovered oil in commercial quantities. We had neighbors who have produced oil, Nigeria, we had Angola, and we've heard about Norway and all those other countries. So what we did was that the government decided to organize a number of seminars. We brought experts from other countries to come in. Then we decided to conduct a survey about a sample size of about 1,000 Ghanaians. To one, decide on how do we even collect our revenues? If we collect, how do we spend? Are we going to spend, or we are going to save it? If you want to spend a percentage and save a percentage, how much are we spending? How much are we saving? And how do we report these transactions? So if we are saving and if we are also more like investing, who do we report to? And all those questions. So we decided to put together the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, a law. And this law, apart from all the arrangements, which maybe later I can explain, has transparency provisions. One of them is the creation of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. The law creates this committee, which is not a government institution. That has representation from the Ghana Bar Association, civil society, so many other non-government, including the National House of Chiefs. And what they do is they monitor how much revenues we are receiving, what we are using the revenue for, and educate the citizens on this. So they go around to every district, publish information on their website, raise issues. So that is one. Another thing is that the Bank of Ghana, for instance, has also been mandated to publish every 6 months how the petroleum funds are doing. As I said, if you give me the permission, I can explain the petroleum revenue management, the framework, so that at least we understand some of these things. So we have reporting to Parliament. The Ministry of Finance reports to Parliament through the budget, through the Petroleum Reconciliation Reports every year. And Parliament, the Parliamentary Select Committee on Mines and Energy invite them to come and answer questions. Every year, this is compulsory in law. The Minister for Finance is also to publish. So this time, not just to Parliament, publish in national newspapers how much we've produced over a certain quarter, how much the price we sold a barrel of oil, how much revenues we've gotten, published for every citizen to see. In addition to this, they are to populate their website. So when you go to Ghana's, the Ministry of Finance website, there's a page called Petroleum Reports, where they have to put all these ones there and all that, in addition to the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. Then finally, we also have a very vibrant civil society, Africa Center for Energy Policy, Imani, IEA, and others. They also do analysis. They follow projects which have been funded with oil, and they publish what we call value for money reports. So in terms of transparency, a lot is being done. Where there may be challenge, and which later I may touch on, is the accountability.
All right, so I will open the session to our participants. I've promoted all of you to be panelists so that we can see your videos and also you can get a chance to speak. So is there anyone with a question to our speaker? Anyone with a question? As you're preparing your questions,
yeah, Doc, thank you.
Yes, please go ahead. You can introduce.
Yeah, Dr. Ackah, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, my question is, I'm just thinking, You did mention about the petroleum revenue framework for that of Ghana. Will you recommend the same framework for the energy and extractive industries? Looking at the framework of the petroleum revenue in Ghana.
Okay, so if you say extractive, are you talking about mining?
The
Because
mining,
petroleum
yes.
is also extractive.
Yeah, then I'm including the mining.
Mining. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Doc, please, should I answer this or I should wait?
You can answer that as other people are also preparing their questions.
Okay. So when you look at our framework, we have a separate account at the Bank of Ghana. We call that the Petroleum Holding Account or Petroleum Holding Fund, where all petroleum receipts, revenues are deposited. Now, when we put this there, according to our law, a certain percentage of the revenue goes to the National Oil Company, GNPC. Now, the law says that 55% or less of the carried and participating interest. So initially I mentioned that when you look at the fiscal regime, we have carried interest, we have participating, we have the corporate tax and all those royalties. Now, it is not 55% or less of the total revenue, oil revenue. It is 55% or less of the carried and participating interest. That should go to the National Oil Company. And this should be approved actually by Parliament. Now, what is left? 70% or less is given to the government budget annually. And we call that the annual budget funding amount. This money is supposed to be used to promote diversification. So we are producing oil. The law has listed 12 areas where we can invest our oil revenues in: agriculture, education, health, science and technology, so many areas. Now, in the absence of a long-term development law or long-term development plan, the Minister for Finance is supposed to select at least not more than 4 priority areas out of these 12 and fund that with the annual budget funding amount, the 70% of the oil revenues, the net oil revenues, for a period of, initially it was 3 years, now 4 years, after which assessment should be done, and those areas can be retained or we can select different areas. Now, one, to promote diversification, and also to build some sectors so that in the event that oil is exhaustible, we don't have oil anymore, we can depend on these sectors. So over the past 10 years, agriculture has been maintained in every cycle. So we selected 3 priorities. Agriculture has been maintained. The current ones we have agriculture, we have education and health and critical infrastructure. The remaining 30% of the net revenue goes to the Ghana Petroleum Funds. And we have 2 funds, the Stabilization Fund and the Heritage Fund. The Stabilization Fund receives 21% of the 31%. And that is for, one, to cushion government when we have oil price shortfall. You know, we do the budget before more like prior to the year. So for instance, the 2022 budget will be done this year. So if we do the budget, we have to forecast the price. We use what we call the benchmark revenue. We forecast the price. So if we do the forecasting and we realize that the price were low and all that, instead of going to borrow, you go to the stabilization fund to take a percentage to cushion government budget. So that is the first purpose. The second purpose is that the law has been amended to give the Minister for Finance that power to cap the fund. So if we have $300 million in the fund, the minister can place a cap at 200 million that the fund is not going beyond. So it means that we have excess of 100 million, which the government uses to pay debt. So we put it in a sinking fund, which is used to virtually pay debt. So that is it. Then the Heritage Fund is more like an endowment, the 9% left, an endowment for future generation that the oil belongs to. Yes. So there are lessons we can take for the mining sector. One lesson is that at least for the oil and gas sector, we know how much is coming in. at least we know where the monies are going to, and it can be tracked, can be reported on. And at least you know which institutions should be held accountable. The mining sector is not like this. The money comes in, hit the consolidated fund, and I mean, you don't, at times, yes, you can see that, oh, we got this from gold, but what has been used for, nobody knows. So in terms of transparency, accountability, and impact, I think that we can have a similar framework for mining, where we have to have some debate is whether, one, we should put some money, let's say, in a foreign account. So the Heritage Fund and the Stabilization Fund, they are in foreign accounts. The highest or the maximum return we've gotten is about 4%. There are instances we even make negative returns and go and borrow from these same banks and these same institutions 11% and 12%. That is what should be debated. But in terms of tracking, transparency, and impact, I think we can take some of these things to the mining sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from our?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. My name is Wumi Iledari. I hope you can hear me. I don't know if my internet is stable. Dr. Ackah, thank you very much for your excellent presentation and answers to some of the questions that I raised with you. Well, like I said, my name is Wumi Iledari. I'm currently at the University of Cape Coast. I'm the Ghana National Petroleum Chair at the Institute for Oil and Gas Study, University of Cape Coast. I'm also a professor emeritus of energy studies from Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge. And I wanted the speaker to look at the hybrid system of fiscal regime from the point of view of what government takes, and also from the point of view of the performance of the fiscal system in Ghana. Actually, we are doing some work on how to reform or recommend reform for the fiscal system design in Ghana at the Institute for Oil and Gas Studies. Particularly, I want Ishmael to perhaps give us an insight as to whether government gets optimal revenue as a result of carry agreement and this equity participation that is introduced for the sake of local content. I don't know whether you've evaluated it, assuming government did not participate and just depend on royalty and tax. Would the government be better off? And that's what we're trying to study at the Oil and Gas Institute, looking into the social component of the basins in Ghana. Because the tendency is that if you look at carry agreement, examine critically, the tendency is the cost may be far more than the benefit if we're able to quantify it. And I don't know whether you have an insight to that, or whether it's something you recommend that we study a little bit more. Because when you have a carry agreement, is it interest-free in Ghana? And if it is not interest-free, is the government better off not being carried? And then when you look at equity participation, and we've looked at it in some part of the world, yes, individuals in Ghana may become millionaires because they got the privilege to buy into the equity portion in the E&P business, but are they using the money they derived to benefit Ghanaians in the long run? And, let me also commend Ghana for the petrol management policy that they have in place. And I think it's very commendable because some of the problems your sister country had is not being able to, for many years, as a petrol management policy. And that has created a lot of what I call prebendalistic lifestyle, which I think Ghana is trying to make fall into that trap. I also would like you to educate the public or the participant on the local content policy. Again, the institute is trying to do research into that, because the local content is not to create domestic millionaires. Local content policy is supposed to be for expanding the economy. And the tendency is for people to take advantage of the local content and just become front to international participants. And at the end of it, the industry will not be. I want you to expand on some of the aspects of the EMP that we need to focus on apart from the big picture, and then graduate ourselves into the bigger aspect of the EMP as the capacity in terms of funding capacity and technical capacity increase. And I want to commend you again for being a part of us at the Institute for Oil and Gas Studies. I will look forward to a lot more engagement going forward. Thank you again for the opportunity.
All right, maybe before you respond, we can take in another question. Is there anyone else with a question as you're preparing for that? We're left with a few minutes. Anyone else?
Yes. I think I have a second question.
Okay.
Dr. Ackah, I just want your view or your thought on this. Looking at the current fiscal regime in the oil and gas industry in Ghana, and for the past 10 years, what we have gotten in by way of benefits from it, do you think Ghana policy or fiscal regime system is sustainable? So simply put, the sustainability of our current Ghana fiscal regime system.
All right, I think you can address those questions as other people are preparing also their questions. So we're left with a few minutes. So if you have a question, prepare your question so that Dr. Ackah can be able to respond to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Victoria and Prof. Umi and Vigil. Thank you very much. Prof. Umi is actually my boss at the University of Cape Coast. I think about 4 questions. Prof asked about 3, then Vigil added the one on the fiscal regime sustainability. So the first one, is government better off if we don't participate so for instance, the government take, if we don't participate, are we going to be better off? Or is the current system the best? I think I'll add that to what Vigil asked. So unfortunately, I've not done any simulation, for instance, to come out with. So I'll use more like a little bit of reasoning to answer this. So the first one is that in 2018, the Ghana Oil and Gas for Inclusive Growth commissioned a study to look at government take and the factors, the elements within the fiscal regime that is actually contributing more to government take. And we realized that the carried and participating interest and the royalties are the major sources of government revenue. But we shouldn't also forget that in the case of the participating interest, we also pay some money. So I think what that study failed to do was that it should have done some netting, maybe take how much government is paying from what we are getting so that we can get a net figure to do a comparison. But where we got the least was actually the corporate tax, because the corporate tax is based on the profit of the companies. And so if they don't declare profit, it means that we are not going to get anything. And this is an industry where a number of things happen. transfer pricing and front. I'm not saying they are happening, but it can happen. So we need to balance this. So if you ask me, what I will recommend is that, one, we should emphasize more on royalties and the carried interest. Take a participating interest so that we use that to still continue to build the capacity of GNPC. We want GNPC to be a first-class company so that, for instance, even the Voltaire Basin, which is onshore, they can manage or they can lead the exploration in that field. So that is my first advice, that yes, instead of government maybe pumping in so much in terms of participation interest, we may have to focus more on the carried interest, which we don't pay much, and the royalties, whilst also participating as a mechanism to develop GNPC into the world-class company we want to develop GNPC. Because the participating interest, apart from the money it brings us, also ensures skills and technology transfer, because GNPC becomes a partner to these companies. And when GNPC is a partner, they sit at the table, they discuss things and all those things. So that is one. The second thing is that I'm very happy Prof brought the local content, local participation. In terms of content, I think we are trying, but in terms of participation, recently we had a number of challenges finding Ghanaians or Ghanaian companies to hold the 5% equity. When ExxonMobil came, Gold had to more like go and take it. Initially, I think government was even looking at SNIT because they made a number of attempts and it was becoming difficult to get more like a local company. That aspect of the law can also be amended so that in the absence of a competent Ghanaian company, GNPC can take the additional 5% into their books so that GNPC, which is also a Ghanaian company actually, can hold that on behalf of Ghana. So I will be very happy to look at the work the Institute for Oil and Gas is doing, the simulations they are doing to see that if we are not participating, will we be better off? But without the simulations, my advice will be that government should concentrate more on royalties during negotiations or competitive bidding, and also look at the carried interest because we don't spend much. And still participate, but not too much, so that at least GNPC can gain from technology and skills transfer. Then is the fiscal regime sustainable? I can say yes, it is sustainable. The fact is that the fiscal regime has elements. So I've mentioned carried interest, participating, the royalties and others. No two contracts we've signed in Ghana were the same. So it means that the elements, the value of the elements can actually change based on a number of factors. Based on negotiations, we recently had our first competitive bidding process. And the companies more like proposed a number of bids, some of them local content, they wanted to give this level, some of them, so they are not the same. So if you see the contract we signed with Jubilee, according to a study by ASEP and others, when you look at the aggregate, more like the net take for the country, it was about 41%. But recent contracts we are signing, some of them we are getting around 60%, 62%. So the same elements, but the value based on a number of factors. Because yes, we've also started production, so we have the experience. So more like there's some form of de-risking. You know, when we had Jubilee, we didn't have commercial production. So when we are coming in, investors were quite worried and all that. But now we have 3 fields and we are producing from 3 fields. We have other potential. So in terms of risk, that is also quite low. So yes, it is sustainable, but what we have to do, as Prof said, is that the exploration and production law, which the new one passed in 2016 makes competitive bidding the default mechanism for awarding contracts. Now, when you open it up, you are transparent and you let companies bid openly, you can get the best actually. But if we still continue to do the first come negotiation administrative, one, at times we may send our people there, there may be a lot of instances probably of rent seeking and others, and we may be shortchanged. So yes, it is sustainable, but I think that we need to make sure that the competitive bidding process become the basis for which licenses are awarded as the law mandates. There's a question here, I think in the chat, carried and participating interest the same? No, please, carried interest is separate. So we have the exploration, we have development, we have production, all these ones come with cost. So depending on which one, you don't pay certain costs. So for instance, the carried interest, you may not pay, for instance, let's say production cost. But in terms of the participating, you are participating, you are part of it. So whatever cost we are incurring, you also contribute so that we can also share the rewards. So that is it. Then after almost 10 years of PRMA, to what extent has it met its objective, and going forward, what can we do to ensure the revenues generated from the sector is optimized? So the PRMA one sought to promote diversification, transparency, accountability, and so many other things. But the implementation of the law actually has a number of deficiencies. So one of them is that the law says that I've given 12 sectors. Out of these 12 sectors, in the absence of a long-term development plan, the Minister for Finance is supposed to select not more than 4. On what basis does the minister select these 4? So in the past, what we've done over the past 10 years is that the party manifesto has become the basis for the selection of the priority areas. Now, because the manifestos are not also underpinned by any empirical analysis, they make promise that we'll do free SHS, we'll do this. How much that will cost at times may not even be quantified. So we just take what is in the manifesto and we start implementing, because the law says select 4, and this is my party manifesto. So such ones are deficiencies that can be corrected. After the first 4, we don't do any analysis to ascertain that yes, the first 4, we selected agriculture, we spent on irrigation, we spent on fertilizer subsidy. How has this affected agriculture output? How has this affected productivity? That has to be done before we select the next 4. That is not done. So these are not deficiencies in the law. These are deficiencies in the implementation of the law, which I think the regulations that has been developed to implement the law should take care of. So a number of deficiencies in terms of implementation. So that is the challenge. But in terms of a law, I think that if we implement the PRMA well, it will serve the purpose for which the law was drafted.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Ackah. Do we have any other questions from our participants?
Yes, ma'am, if you don't mind. Again, thank you. And, I'm sure there's so much that we can continue to do to make sure that we create value using petroleum resources and its development in Ghana. I want you to, because you mentioned something.
I think we've lost you. All right, as you are connecting back, anyone else has a question? I see Adoko, you had raised your hand. Could you please?
Yeah, my hand is raised. So I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
One has to do with GNPC's sustainability of GNPC's operational mandate. And Dr. Ackah, the law, the PRMA, says that I think for like 15 years, that support that goes to GNPC must continue. It's going to go on for 15 years. Now, we've done almost 10 years of the PRMA, and we see how GNPC manages the transfers that go to them. So, I mean, there have been reports of government using how do I even put it? The books, borrowing on the books of GNPC. We've had instances where GNPC has spent on non-core mandates, things that are away from its technical mandate. Now, particularly within the context of this funding ending in the next 5 years or so, what does these expenditures mean for GNPC's technical capacity going forward, particularly because I understand that those transfers are to build the capacity of GNPC. Now, secondly, my second question is that there's been some discussions regarding the unitization of Springfield's discovery, which is Afina, and then ENI's blocks. There's been some sort of pushback from ENI, and the minister is actually trying to carry out his mandate of pushing for, getting the two companies to unitize their block. I understand there are some reasons why ENI is, pushing back, because as it stands now, there are worries about not knowing the real value of Springfield's discovery. Now, looking at the posturing of our ministry, does it have any implications for, future investment in the sector going forward? Thank you.
Before you respond, we shall take 2 more questions because we are running out of time. Anyone else has a question? And then after he has addressed that, we shall do the concluding remarks. Anyone else with a question before Dr. Ackah responds? All right, so that will be our last question for this webinar.
Okay, it's back. How can I get it?
Okay, I think you can start responding to the question.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc and Mr. Doko, for that those questions. So the first one is on the sustainability of GNPC, looking at their expenditure pattern. Yeah, so I think for the first 5 years of oil production, Ghana made about $3.6 billion. Out of this $3.6 billion, about $980 million went to GNPC for one, the equity participation, and for investment and other things.
I think there's a network issue.
So GM in the first 5 years, as I mentioned, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now, yes.
Okay, so for instance, GNPC provided sponsorship for the Blasters, Ghana's national team, for so many other events. They invested in the Mole National Park, they invested in so many other areas, and it became a bit of a challenge to a number of people. But not just that, even in terms of government had a program, capacity building program, where they wanted to build capacity of Ghanaians for the oil and gas sector. But even that, we're giving money to the Musician Union of Ghana and so many other things. So all these became topical issues in Ghana. But I think after the debates, after a number of discussions and all that, some of these things have been streamlined. So GNPC, when you look at the trend now, are now investing in chairs in institutions. So University of Cape Coast, Institute for Oil and Gas Studies, they have a chair at KNUST where they are building local capacity, top-class local capacity for the oil and gas sector, in energy, in environment, in oil and gas, in engineering, in commerce, in economics, which they are doing, which is also relevant actually to the sustainability of the oil and gas industry. So that's the first one. The second is that, yes, the law says that 15 years after coming into force of the PRMA, we will, more like GNPC can, we will not give GNPC money from the petroleum funds, more like. So unfortunately, no study has been done to assess the state of readiness of GNPC, and this 15 years will end in 2026. So that is an area maybe the institute or some of the think tanks can look at. Where I sit, I know GNPC is doing a lot of work on the Voltaigne Basin, doing reconnaissance and gathering data and doing so many other things there. They've invested in some technology. Then when we did a competitive bidding process we had about 6 blocks. Out of the 6 blocks, 3 of them were for competitive bidding, 2 for direct negotiation, and 1 was actually allocated to GNPC to get a strategic partner as part of the more like capacity building. So in terms of government, on the part of government and on the part of GNPC, a number of things have been done, but there are still challenges. As you said, there were times GNPC gave government of Ghana loan, and I mean, these were done without any papers covering. There are instances where we hear that there are some investments that may not be in line with their core mandates. But as I said, gradually things are improving, but a lot can be done through advocacy, through engagement with GNPC, so that they can concentrate on their core mandate of exploration and production, while also supporting institutions to build the needed capacity for the country. So going forward, maybe a state of readiness study of GNPC can be conducted by the institute or any other institution to assess whether by 2026, GNPC will be okay to go alone. So that is on the first one. The second one is on the unitization. Let me just touch on briefly. So yes, it was a proposal that based on a number of technical factors and geological factors, ENI and Springfield's that field should be unitized. So what I know is that the ministry, not the minister, the ministry thought it would be in the good interest of the country, of both parties to do that. But that was not agreed on, I think, before the elections. So discussions are still ongoing. I don't think the minister can say that whether you like it or not, you have to do this. I think they are trying to come up with competent reasons why unitization will be best. And this has been done in other areas. I think Prof can give examples, Nigeria, Cameroon, and so many other areas, which have been beneficial to some of the countries involved. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I see Gloria, your hand is up. I think that will be the last question we're taking since we've come to the end of our webinar. So we shall get a question from Gloria, if you can be brief. I see Eric, your hand is up. And I see someone else's hand is up.
Yes, my hand is up too, if you don't mind.
Is that Delvin?
No, this is Prof.
Oh, okay. So let's first hear from Gloria, then Eric, and then Delvin, and then the Prof. And then as Dr. Ackah is making his concluding remarks, you can address your questions. So Gloria, we shall hear from you first.
All right, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm so sorry, I had a power outage briefly, so I'm not too sure if my question has been addressed. I did hear Ishmael talk about the fact that our problem has been with implementation and not law. I wish to ask, wouldn't it be possible that maybe the law in a way is amended such that, for instance, you're talking about, is it 12 areas or whatever the number is, and 4, not more than 4 should be dealt with within a period of 4 years. Wouldn't it be possible to say, for example, after 4 years, at least 2 new areas should be selected? I'm saying this with a view that I believe all the 12 areas are important, even though some may be more important at a particular time. But if we don't take care, for example, if 4 areas are selected over and over again, then that means we are leaving all the other areas untouched. So wouldn't it be possible to have a bit of amendment where at least whoever is in charge is compelled to at least bring some new areas on board? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we shall take a question from Delvin.
Okay, hi. I have a question for Doc. You did make mention of an interesting thing that transparency in Ghana is improving. Yes, we know transparency is right now it's being improved because of the initiatives that are going on with PIAC and EITI and other organizations helping to improve and promote transparency. But you also made a comment that the problem now is accountability. So I wanted you to touch or go further with that, because if transparency is actually being improved, how would accountability be a problem if we have all these organizations trying to improve and promote the transparency, and then how would it have a conflict to do with accountability? I don't know if my question is you understand it, but that's
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, and then I saw another hand, but I can't see it again. Who else had a question?
Well, I told you, may I ask my question then?
Yes, please, yes.
Well, sorry again, and we had power failure at the institute, and so that's why I was disconnected when I was speaking. Again, that takes us back to the law with respect to how to spend petrol money. Even though we had a very good law with respect to petrol management, and I think Dr. Ishmael did say something about the fact that it has politics written into it. The way to use oil money is for infrastructure development, and infrastructure in terms of energy and industry. And so I want Ishmael to again look at the debate between early revenue and delay revenue, because when he was explaining the situation for us with respect to whether we should emphasize royalty or taxes, why is the tax not contributing much more money than royalty? Because royalty is regressive. I just did a study recently that is published where I compared fiscal regimes in 9 countries. Ghana is very attractive and to a large extent about the most progressive in West Africa. But is it good enough? And so, Ishmael, how do we convince the public that the oil money is not for sharing, but for infrastructure development to expand the economy? And royalty may not be the way to go if we want to expand more exploration and production. What do you think?
All right, thank you for that. Eric, I see your hand is up. I can take your question as our last question. Eric, are you there? Okay, if Eric, you're not there, I see Abba Mesa. Abba, are you there? I see your hand is up. Okay.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay.
Eric is here. I'm here. Yeah. I just want to take Dr. Ishmael's thought on the stability clause relating to subcontractors. You know, the Petroleum Agreement of Ghana seems, in fact, a lot of people are thinking that once the contractors are stabilized by some stability clauses, the subcontractor is also stabilized by the same stability clause. And I just want to have his take on whether or not that is true. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And Abba, are you there? Okay, if Abba, you're not there, then Dr. Ackah, you'll go ahead to respond to those questions, and then we shall have our concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Doc, and I wish to thank everyone for the active participation.
Hello. Okay, sorry. Okay.
Okay.
Abba, it's fine. You can go. You can ask your question.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Actually, I'm a bit confused. Not confused, but it's a bit. I heard somebody talking on the implementations of the law. We have issues with that. And when it comes to transparency, I've also come to realize that it hasn't been well fetched, in my opinion, because everything that we're doing at the sorry, can I cut off? I'm sorry. Is it clear?
Please go on. Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I was proposing if we could maybe implement the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. I don't know if any of us know about the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. That will ensure more transparency and accountability. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you. Ask your question, and then Dr. Ackah will go ahead to respond to all the questions.
Oh, okay. So on the issue of transparency, I'll just proposing, if possibly, we could enshrine the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which ensures much of transparency and accountability. I don't know if any of us know about that act.
All right. Hello. Okay. All right. Yeah. So we've got your question, and I'll let Dr. Ackah to respond to all the questions at once. Thank you very much, Abba.
Thank you very much, Abba. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, everyone. So the first one, should the law be amended so that, for instance, in terms of the priority areas, if we select these 4 for this year, we can change them, maybe select another 4. So at least all the 12 areas can be tight before maybe we hit exhaustibility. Yes, the law can be amended, but amendment of the law, the process and the cost and so many other things, it takes time. So this can actually be addressed. Every act has a regulation. So when we pass every parent act, we develop a regulation for that act. The regulation tells us how that act, that law can be implemented. So the regulation does not really go through the parliamentary debates and so many other things. It is developed, it is presented to stakeholders, they make input. Parliamentary Select Committee on Mines and Energy looks at it. And when they are fine with it, we place it and at Parliament for 21 days, it becomes regulation. So we have LI this, LI that, the legislative instrument. So that can be modified, amended to incorporate your suggestion. However, my thinking is that when we select priority areas, we are selecting them to achieve the national, more like the objective of the act. What are the objectives of this act? 1, to fast track the rate of economic development of Ghana. 2, to promote equal and even and balanced development across all regions of Ghana. and it has other objectives, but these are the two principal ones. So if we select priority areas, I believe that before we can even select a new one or maintain the existing one, we need to do a study. We need to have a purpose for which the priority areas were selected. Do a study to ascertain whether what we did actually met the objectives we had. If it didn't meet, can we repeat them so that it meets maybe in the next one? What went wrong, we put it in place, then we select new ones. Because if we also don't take care, we'll select education this year, then we'll start building schools. That we're building oil-funded schools. We built 120, some of them not completed. Then if the law says that every 4 years, probably we may have to change. The point is that maybe then we go and take another 10, then this one has become not completed and all that. So we need to make sure that first there's objective driving the priority areas. We are selecting the priority because they can contribute to the few things I'll say. The second one is on the accountability. So the law says that, yes, we have to publish this report, we have to meet the citizens, make presentations to them, do that. Make information available to them, accessible to them, meaningful to the public. That is transparency. They get access to the information, they understand it, they don't pay for it. And when you read it, you understand it. There should even be a feedback mechanism through PIAC, where if you have issues, you can raise it, they will address it or send it to the Minister for Finance. So the transparency aspect, and when you look at the Natural Resource Governance Index, over the past two indices, so 2015 and 2017, in terms of transparency, Ghana has ranked #1 in terms of oil. My challenge is that, so in terms of accountability, and accountability is the fact that the law says, as the first person who has the question on the Amendments Act, the law says select not more than 4 areas. But there are instances ministers have selected about 6 areas. In that instance, what happens to the person? You are going against the requirement, the provisions of the Act. Select 4, then you select 6. It is against the requirement. It is against the provisions. What happens to you? Nothing. And there are instances like 2019 where the ADFA was not exhausted. So we said, oh, we'll spend maybe $400 million. We spent $350 million. Where is the $50 million? Nobody is accountable. Nobody is saying anything. PIAC is making a lot of. So that is what I'm talking about. That do this and you go and do something different. Build capacity, then you donate, you give oil money to the Musician Union of Ghana. I mean, music is important. We all love music. Kojuentri, Kenata, we all love them. But are we going to use the oil money to build their capacity so that they do what in the oil and gas sector? Sing about oil. So that is in contravention. You are going against the provisions of the Act. So if nothing happens to you, then there's no accountability. But if you go against the provisions and you are punished, then there is some form of accountability. Then, why is the tax not contributing as much as royalty? And my opinion on the debate between maybe debate on oil revenue management. So the corporate tax is on the profit of the company. Now, in simple terms, we have the gross oil revenue. We multiply that by the price, then you get maybe your gross revenues. Now we have to take expenses out to get the net profit. Now, in terms of expenditure, as I said, there are instances of transfer pricing. The company said, oh, we spent $2 million in doing this. We repaired this one, we repaired the FPSO, we did this, we did this. It cost us this much. Ghana Revenue Authority, the cost audit unit of Petroleum Commission should go and audit. For the first 5 years of oil production, we didn't even have a cost audit unit. So who is going to do the auditing to even ascertain whether what the companies are saying are true? So what they give to us, we accept and take it. Now, so the companies can, and I'm using can, I'm not saying they were, inflate expenses. Now, when they inflate the expenses, what it means is that they report very low profits. So if you say that corporate tax is 35%, they said they made profit of 100, you are getting 35. But the royalty is on the gross production. So we produce 100, and royalty is 7% of the 100. So we take the royalty from the gross without even the expenses and all those things. So I think that is why the royalty was high. On the debate, yeah, some people say that like Alaska and other areas, oil revenues should be shared for the citizens. So you'll be there, so far as you're a citizen, you get an alert that oil revenue received, 50 cedis, you've gotten yours, we move on. So that is somebody's, well, others also say, oh, like the no way, let us put everything in investment and spend a percentage of the returns. That is also there. Then we also have the infrastructure bit. And in fact, in Africa, in Ghana, we need a lot of infrastructure. So what we decided to do was to also, again, in terms of the debate, go more like a hybrid. So take a percentage. So when you look at our ABFA, 70% of the ABFA is supposed to be spent on infrastructure. So take the ABFA, we selected agriculture, education. Any money we send to agriculture, 70% of that money should go into agriculture infrastructure, 30% for goods and services. When you take education, 70% for education infrastructure. So we were also mindful of the fact that we needed infrastructure, and because we are now middle income, ODA was also reducing. So we had to invest, and so we are investing in infrastructure. So I support the idea that even I want us to even have a debate on the Heritage Fund as to whether keeping it outside, earning interest of 1%, and borrowing at 12%, 13% to come and do roads is the best way to go. So I also believe that, yes, we need to invest in infrastructure. We need to do investment. But it shouldn't be just like how we did in the first 6-7 years of oil production, that we select 100 infrastructure and spread the money. You can't make impact. So we need to do a lot of analysis to see which of them will make impact, where we should put the money to, so we can track and all those things. So, Prof, that is a debate I'll be very happy when I come to the institute we can have. The last is on the stabilization clauses, that if I have a stabilization clause, let's say a contract, Tallow and GNPC and Ghana government, there's a stabilization clause. If I'm a subcontractor to Tallow, does that also extend to me? Well, I'm not a lawyer, but what I would say is that the contract between the subcontractor and Tallow is different because these are separate entities. The subcontractor is not a party to the parent contract. And the terms of the subcontract may not be the same as the parent contract. Stabilization clauses are there for a certain purpose. So you cannot extend. It's just like saying that, oh, the main contract, maybe we use a price of 4, inflation of this. So then all subcontract you sign should have the same. They can renegotiate. They can actually negotiate based on the existing economic conditions. So I'm not a lawyer, so take this answer with a lot of caution. But what I would say is that it may not extend to the subcontract. So final one on the lessons. So when we discovered oil, we made some things right. One of them was that we decided to move away from how we've managed our mineral resources. So we did a survey. We went to the people. When you look at the 1992 Constitution, mineral resources are for the people. The government manages on behalf of all of us. So they went to them. How do we collect the revenue? How do we spend it? If you want to save, how do we save it? And all those things. So that was a very positive thing. We learned from others. Nigeria, Norway, Trinidad, Malaysia, we learned from them. So that was also good. We developed a petroleum revenue management law so that it will guide us. It will help us track where our money is going and all that. So that was also very positive. We provided transparency mechanisms that whatever we get, publish it so that we all know. In fact, ASAP has a website called ouroilmoney.org where they have live data. As soon as they hit the account, it is there. So if you go there, it's free. You can see how much we are getting every day. So these were very positive things. But there were other things that offer some lesson to countries that are coming. One of them was that we had a law, exploration and production law, we passed in 1984. That law was archaic, but that law was the law governing how we're doing exploration and production. So, and how much you can get, you were focusing more on revenue. Let's do revenue management, let's do this. But what brings the revenue? It is the output. So if you don't have any good law governing the output, you can be shortchanged. We delayed in passing a very good exploration and production law, which was passed in 2016. And that was about 9-10 years after oil discovery. Then we also wanted to build capacity. We started giving money to so many people, basic schools, and all those things. I mean, which are good. I mean, everything we do can be justified. But if you have a purpose that we want to build capacity for the oil and gas sector, you don't spend so much money training youth in how to repair potholes on roads. I mean, that may not have that significance. So we see that local content in the initial stages, we're just looking at the downstream without going up where the money is, because capacity and some of the other things was not there. The other challenges, I mean, how to even select projects to fund with oil money. How do we do it? Lobbying and party manifestos and some of these things that are often biased towards a certain group or a certain political parties. Then finally, we initially did not establish a very good linkage between the oil and gas sector and the other sectors. So we were saying, oh, we are managing the oil and gas sector well, but the other sectors were not. So we were borrowing. We're just borrowing, we're borrowing until we got to a point where we had to even use some of the oil money to go and pay debt. Because yes, oil and gas sector, everybody is praising Ghana. But how about the other sectors? Domestic revenue mobilization was going down because yes, we have oil. Meanwhile, the ODA was also reducing and all those ones. So those were some of the challenges. Again, while we had a stabilization fund to help us cushion against volatility, we decided to also introduce an amendment so that we can cap it. We can use the stabilization fund. So when oil price fell in 2005, we had to cut capital expenditure by 54% because oil price has fallen. Oil was into almost everything. Agriculture, though the law said 4 areas, we're investing in every sector. And it made oil. So when there's volatility, it affects every sector. So these are some of the lessons we learned. So Ghana, we've had our positive side. We continue to make progress and all that. And finally, on the last question, I think on the Osley law, and to be frank, I don't know much about that. But what I know is that apart from our transparency mechanisms, we are part of a lot of international, like the EITI and so many other frameworks that also promote transparency. The Dodd-Franklin and so many other things are used in governing energy, red flags, and the government considers all these ones in ensuring that, at least in terms of transparency. I wish to thank you very much for your audience and for your participation, and hopefully we'll meet another time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Ackah, for that brilliant and excellent presentation. So this marks the end of our webinar because we've utilized all our time, but do not forget to watch the video on YouTube. You can also share the video with all your friends and contacts. And also just to note, on the 26th of March, we shall have a youth energy forum where we shall hold debates. And obviously I'll extend an invitation to Dr. Ackah to be able to participate in this energy forum, where we shall be asking questions with respect to petroleum and the entire energy sector on the African continent, and what can the youth do to ensure that they benefit from the resources, but also to ensure that they are well equipped with leadership skills. So if you would like to participate in the debate, I'll be sharing all the information via my social media, and that will be a chance for us to have a debate about these issues. So again, Ishmael, thank you very much for your time, and our participants, thank you very much. Do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Dr. Victoria Nalule. It has various issues, it has various topics featuring different experts, including a topic we just recently held 2 days back on stabilization clauses in petroleum agreements. So this marks the end of our webinar. Bye-bye and have a lovely time.